All right, well, welcome everyone. We're so glad to have you here today. Welcome to the fourth session in the California Farm Food Safety e-learning series. This is our first session that is focused on production agricultural water. And I'm Linda Harris. I'm a specialist in cooperative extension in the Department of Food Science and Technology at UC Davis and the UC Division of Agriculture and Natural Resources. I'm also principal investigator with the Western Center for Food Safety. This e-learning series is intended to provide information about agricultural water used during the production of produce. This series is tailored towards Californians with specific production agricultural water regulatory and enforcement information that might be relevant to California growers. And it is funded by the California Department of Food and Agriculture Produce Safety Program. The e-learning sessions in the water series will be held this Thursday, today, and next Thursday, lasting 2 hours. And several speakers will provide short presentations during these sessions, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end of the program. Now, as you'll note, we actually originally intended on having one of these sessions last week, and we were hoping to be able to update everyone on agricultural water and the produce safety rule. And that the rule hasn't yet been published. So we have rescheduled the session to June 17th, and we are still hopeful that we might be able to provide an update on that date based on the published proposed rule. But we have no specific information that this will happen before then. We do not have a crystal ball. We do not have inside information on when that rule will be published. However, everybody who's registered for these sessions will be provided a notice when we are able to update on that specific agenda. So the topics we chose for session 2 and 3, or 1 and 2, depending on how you wanted to count it, are those topics that pertain to agricultural water that we believe would be relevant to both current and whatever modifications to subpart E are eventually proposed. It's critically important that growers understand how to assess and address risks associated with their agricultural water systems, and that should not change with a changing proposed rule. And current options for treating agricultural water, which is the topic of our next session, will also still be relevant under the current and whatever changes are proposed. As you have undoubtedly figured out, we are using Zoom as a platform for this series. We have muted all of the participants, and we encourage you to ask questions via the chat. We will be referring to those questions at the end. And so after all the speakers have finished, we will have a question and answer session that will include questions in the chat and a couple of questions that were submitted in advance. Following the conclusion of the webinar, we'll also be sending you a link for a survey. And please take the time to complete the survey and provide us some feedback on this session. The sessions are being recorded, and they're going to be available at the UC Food Safety website. Under training, you will find a link to the California Farm Food Safety e-learning series. And the first 3 sessions in that series pertain to biological soil amendments of animal origin. Those videos are already available on this website, and you will see here, this is just from the first of 3 sessions, but the videos have been broken down into smaller individual presentations, and we'll do the same for water. So you won't have to go to the website and view a 2-hour video. Instead, you'll be able to view a shorter video that is focused on a topic of specific interest to you. So for today, we are providing an overview of assessing on-farm risks associated with pre-harvest agricultural water systems. Broadly, what we'll cover today is putting things in context of the current produce safety rule, more of a how to approach assessing agricultural water risk. We have someone from the CDFA with us today who will talk about their approach to on-farm inspections, what they're looking for, and both visually and from interactions with you as a grower. And then finally, we'll follow up with some available resources that you can access in order to help with assessing water risk on your farm. So I'm going to introduce the three speakers that are joining me today right now, and then we will just go from one presentation to the other without a break for introductions. So first up is Donna Clemens. She has served as the Produce Safety Alliance Southwest Regional Extension Associate since 2015. And in that role, she's based actually here in California in Riverside. Her role with PSA is to offer training courses with the produce safety rules. So she has 6 years of experience in providing that training, as well as providing technical assistance to growers, produce safety educators, and in helping to pull together educational resources. Before she joined PSA, she worked at the University of Maryland as a produce safety trainer. And her involvement in the produce industry began while she was working on her family's fruit and vegetable farm. She will cover an overview of the produce safety rule as it pertains to assessing risks of pre-harvest agricultural water. Next up is Ronnie Bond. He is a water quality researcher here at UC Davis at the Western Center for Food Safety, which is a U.S. Food and Drug Administration Center of Excellence, is located at UC Davis. He has worked in microbial water quality for 25 years, including working at Southern Mississippi's Gulf Coast Research Laboratory and the Mississippi Shellfish Sanitation Program. But his current research is focused on measuring the variability of microbial water quality in agricultural systems. And he spends a lot of time roaming around the Salinas Valley collecting water samples. Ronnie's going to go through some examples of on-farm agricultural water source and distribution system inspections and risk assessment. Our final speaker this morning is Don Stokel. He is a senior environmental scientist with the California Department of Food and Agriculture, and he specializes in water microbial quality. He hasn't been there very long. We're lucky that he came into this role just, I think 6 weeks ago, after helping launch the Produce Safety Alliance Grower Training Program and other PSA efforts at Cornell University. So he and Donna have been colleagues since 2015. Prior to working with Cornell Extension and the Produce Safety Alliance, Don was a research hydrologist with the U.S. Geological Survey Water Resources Division, where he was a principal investigator on numerous fecal source tracking studies. Don's going to review CDFA's role in inspection with respect to the PSR, with a focus on how CDFA approaches an inspection and what they're looking for from growers. So our learning objectives today, we are hopeful that you will be able to confidently identify agricultural water, and I'm going to spend just a couple of slides making sure we're all focused on the thing that we're talking about today and as defined by the produce safety rule. And then our learning objectives really flow around that, being able to identify risks of microbial safety, in your water sources and distribution system, being able to understand what kind of actions you could take to reduce those risks, and then what you can do to record those things that you've identified and your management strategies. So it's really critical in my mind that we focus on agricultural water, because the rule is on agricultural water, and agricultural water is very narrowly defined within the rule. And sometimes I think people want to include more in this definition than what is in the rule. So I wanted to start with a couple of slides just to make sure everybody's on the same page. This is a shortened version of the definition of agricultural water that appears in the produce safety rule. And it is, kind of modified, but essentially the words that are important here is that it is water used in covered activities on covered produce. That means produce that is under the rule, where water is intended to or is likely to contact covered produce or food contact surface. So that is really the critical language that we need to pay attention to. So I've just taken a couple of slides actually from the Produce Safety Alliance training material with a couple of additional photos of my own thrown in. But in this case, we have overhead irrigation of lettuce or other leafy greens, and micro sprinkler irrigation of citrus. In both of these cases, lettuce and citrus are covered produce, so they're covered under the produce safety rule. In both of these examples, the water is coming into direct contact with the produce item, so intended to or likely to contact covered produce. And so both of these cases would qualify as agricultural water. Likewise, if we were the water that is used to dilute pesticide or other crop protection sprays, it would perhaps be sprayed up into a canopy of pistachios or other tree nuts, or drip irrigation used for production of carrots. In both cases, pistachios and carrots are covered produce items. In both cases, these are applications of water that would likely or intended to contact the produce. And with the carrots, they're growing underground, the produce item is underground, the water is intended to contact the produce in that particular case. In contrast, if we have drip irrigation with walnuts, this is not agricultural water. Even though walnuts are covered produce, there is no likely or intended contact of that drip irrigation system with the walnuts in the tree. And for potatoes being irrigated with overhead irrigation, in this case, potatoes are not covered produce because they fall under the excluded category of rarely consumed raw.